Hello, my friends, and welcome to this episode of The Evolved Man. I've got to say it at the beginning of this episode. I am taking full responsibility for the stupidity of my industry. And I'm here on behalf of all true performance professionals to apologize for people in the fitness industry who give this bad information. The episode is 164. The topic is top fitness myths that need to be eradicated. Welcome to the Evolved Man, where we are at war with the mediocrity of modern man. The Evolved Man is for men like you who are willing to be strong, open, and aggressive learners. Men who are not afraid to disrupt and change. It's time we ditch the current conventional idea that we devolve with age, that the dad bod is our destiny, and that the glory days are behind us. Your best isn't behind you, and I'm here to provide you with practical tools, a few tips and tricks, and everyday wisdom to help you evolve into your highest form. Strong, lean, smart, educated, and emotionally intelligent. Now, let's go to war. Yeah, welcome back to the Evolved Man, where we are at war with the mediocrity of modern man. Welcome, my friends, and thank you for listening to this episode. Hey, real quick, do me a favor, will you? If you find value in the podcast, please give us a rating. We continue to get great guests on the show, and your ratings help us attract even more amazing people to talk to. Now, the fitness industry is full of false information and too many myths to mention. So I'm just going to give you what my current top 5 are in no particular order. And as I mentioned, I'm taking full accountability and full responsibility for all of the idiots out there that are giving you this bad information. I don't want you to be confused. I want you to get practical tips, practical information, but also science-based, evidence-based information that you can use to make your decisions on. So, what are my top 5? These are my current top 5 in no particular order. Myth number 1, muscle weighs more than fat. Myth number 2, complex movements are great for improving your metabolism. Myth number 3, you need to avoid carbs at all costs. Myth number 4, you need to eat clean. And finally, myth number 5, just about anything that comes out of any influencer's mouth that is rambling and running around a grocery store. Let's jump into myth number 1. Muscle weighs more than fat. This is one of the dumbest things I've heard. And if you've ever said it, fret not, because I actually recently heard it from a trainer in a gym setting. No, muscle does not weigh more than fat. Weight is a gravitational pull. A pound is a pound. A pound of muscle is the same as a pound of fat. They both weigh, guess what? 1 pound. But here's what I think is meant by this stupid saying. I actually think there's 3 components to this that if we're going to dig deeper and understand the evidence and the science behind it, what is probably intended. Now, I can only guess because, as my grandpa taught me, you don't guess at stupidity. But here's my guess of 3 things that I think that means. Muscle is, in fact, more dense than fat. A pound of fat is more voluminous. It has more volume than a pound of muscle. Muscle is dense and smaller. So if you gain a pound of muscle, it's less visible on the body than a pound of fat. Number 2, muscle has a leaner shape to it. Because muscle tissue is dense, we typically look smaller when we lose fat and gain muscle. The shape of the muscle has a slimmer look to the overall body. And by adding additional pounds of muscle and losing body fat, we tend to look more shapely and slimmer. And number 3, muscle has a higher metabolic need than fat does. Now, a lot of people will say unknowingly that fat has no metabolism to it, that when you burn fat, you automatically, your metabolism improves because fat has no metabolism. That's just not true. fat has metabolism to it, which means that it requires metabolism. It requires burning in the body processes to stay healthy. In fact, fat is a precursor and important and essential to our hormone production. Now, the difference is that muscle has a higher metabolic rate than what fat tissue does. The lower metabolic rate with fat that relative to muscle tissue means that if you burn body fat and you increase lean muscle, you will most likely increase your metabolic rate. Now, myth number 2, complex movements are great for metabolism. And I would add the idea of spot reducing to this, which we'll get to in just a second. There seems to be an extremely toxic trend on any social media that you pull up these days where influencers post exercises that are extremely complex. Think grab dumbbells, curl, press, and then do some sort of crazy lunge or squat and jump all at the same time. Well, they may be good for clicks. They're not better for boosting your metabolic rate. In fact, you're probably at a disadvantage in the effort to reward ratio when you make movements too complex. Stay-at-home Sally, who looks like she's never eaten a sandwich in her life, showing you an exercise that combines 3 or 4 movements together is not, quote, stoking your metabolism. She is simply increasing the confusion of your nervous system and my confusion personally as well. The reason why the best athletes, the ones that look and feel the best, do simple, repetitive, and basic movements is because they're effective. They work. The idea that I'm going to take 5-pound dumbbells, curl them, press them over my head, and then do a squat is absolutely ridiculous if I want to improve my overall metabolic rate. 5-pound dumbbells in your hand while you're doing a squat does absolutely nothing to improve the strength of your lower body. You can handle 10 pounds in a squat. 5 in each hand does nothing to improve your overall strength. All these complex movements do is make you look. Now, complex movements not only do not increase your metabolism, they also might be detrimental to your progress in the long run. And let's settle this once and for all. Anytime you see somebody posting a video that says something like this, quote, do this to make your waistline, butt, etc., 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 smaller, run. Run as far away from the idiot making that video as you can. We have decades of research showing you cannot spot reduce. There is no crunch. There is no butt plaster. There is nothing that you can do to reduce a specific area of your body. That's not the way fat loss works. There is no exercise to reduce a specific area of the body. If you see complex movements on social media telling you this is a great way to burn calories, fire up your metabolism, oh, and by the way, do these things to reduce your belly, run. Myth number 3, you need to avoid carbs. Now, this is particularly insidious because we've moved from fat being the bad guy when I was a kid to now carbs are the bad guy. Now, would most people do better on a lower carbohydrate diet than what they're currently eating? Yeah, probably. But that has more to do with the overconsumption of carbohydrates and sugar in American diet and less to do with the idea that carbohydrates are bad in and of themselves. Now, many of you have heard me state on the podcast before that I tend to eat in what is technically classified as a lower carbohydrate diet throughout the year. But I want to explain what that means because I think there may be some confusion out there. First, I prioritize protein. And I do that for several reasons that we won't really get into in this episode. But when I plan my nutrition, protein is the first thing that I prioritize. I also make sure that I have enough fats in my diet to keep me satisfied, full, and energetic, and support my hormonal balance. You see, the proteins and fats ensure that I am protecting against negative hormones, or excuse me, a negative hormonal cascade. Now, there's more to it. I get sunshine. I sleep well. I make sure that I'm resting and recovering. There are many, many things that I do to make sure that my hormones are in check. But essentially, from a dietary standpoint, I focus the foundation of my diet around protein and fat. Now, once my proteins and fats are built into my eating plan, the rest of my energy comes from carbohydrates. And because of that, it tends to be on the lower end. However, there are times of the year that I increase my carbohydrates depending on what my training and my goals are. For instance, when I'm in an accumulation phase of my training where higher volume is the name of the game, I increase my carbohydrates to fuel my workouts. I tend to get more carbohydrates right around my workout time, either pre or post, in order to fuel the growth. I also enjoy higher carbohydrate levels when I travel to areas of the world that have fruits in season that I don't get in the middle of the winter in the mountains of Utah. One of the reasons carbohydrates have become villainized is that we have, like many things in America, taken the consumption to an extreme. Our carbohydrate consumption, especially our sugar consumption, has significantly increased in the past 30 years. The food products that we eat are loaded with added sugars to make them more palatable. In fact, a simple trick, if you don't know this, is look at the ingredients that are on any package. And the first ingredient is the thing that is the most prevalent by volume weight. As you continue down from there, you will notice the second, the third, and so on are the highest per volume weight. Now, sugar, carbohydrates come in many forms and they are labeled appropriately. When you learn what they are, you'll find that there are multiple types of sugar that are put into your foods, and thus we tend to eat an overconsumption of sugar. In fact, many Americans have become insulin resistant because of the constant sugar drip that they are on, and thus carbohydrates have truly become a problem for them. No, you don't need to avoid carbs. And yes, you can lose fat while eating carbs, but you do need to be conscious of where those carbohydrates are coming from. And in general, you need to understand what they're doing inside of your body. Now, myth number 4 is you need to eat clean. Much like any other dietary dogma, the clean eating message continues to be a menace to the people. Clean eating advocates claim that you need to get rid of anything that is not whole foods based. You only need to eat things that don't have chemicals in it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Don't get me wrong here. I'm not advocating that you go all in on the Krispy Kreme and the Lay's potato chips, but the idea that everything you eat needs to come from clean sources feeds into the binary that makes many people fearful of food. There's no moral value to food, and yet we place judgment on it consistently. I ate good. I ate bad. These are descriptors. They are judgments, and they have no place in the way that we describe the food we eat. Food is so much more than good or bad, clean or not. Food is culture, connection, convenience, communication, and comfort. I can tell you for a fact that my donuts that I make for my family are not, quote, clean. And no, I don't make some weird vulcanized Frankenstein version that I would call healthy. They're not healthy, but they are good. They taste good. And you know what? Out of the 5 C's, they click 3 of them. The first one is culture. The donuts come out once or twice a year and are part of our family culture. In fact, the last time I made it was for my son's girlfriend's birthday. We ate them while we played our typical Sunday night games, laughed, had fun, and celebrated her birthday. The donuts are a part of the culture of the family. Second, they are connection. The process of making the donuts brings the family together. Friends show up at the house and they're also part of the process. They get the donuts immediately after they come out of the fryer and are glazed. They are hot and fresh. Family, friends participate. They are a part of the entire process. And in doing so, we converse, we have connection, and the donuts check the box of connection. Finally, their comfort. We simply eat some foods because we want to feel comfortable and we want the sense of comfort and relaxation. Now, no, the donuts don't help with weight loss. They don't help improve my muscle gain priorities. But because they tick 3 out of the 5 C's, they stay in my life for a couple of times a year. You don't need to eat clean all the time in order to be a healthy person, lose body fat, gain muscle. As long as you understand the 5 C's and you learn how to balance all 5 in your life throughout the weeks and the months of the year, clean eating is not a necessary thing. Myth 5, just about anything that comes out of an influencer in a grocery store. Okay, now you got me here. This one isn't really a myth. It's just a pet peeve of mine. I am so sick of seeing people on social media walk through a grocery store and put our panic porn out there, telling you all of this stuff is bad. This is garbage as they grab the bag of whatever. Don't get me wrong. I believe there's a lot wrong with our food system and what's being put into food products. But for heaven's sakes, can we just stop with the panic porn? Yes, eating significant processed foods with additional chemicals will cause problems in the long run. No one is arguing that. No, it doesn't help to make everyone fearful. Social media influencers, guys like Gary Brecka and Paul Saladino, 2 of the biggest quacks in our society today, are the new versions of cheap evangelists like Kenneth Copeland, Jimmy Swaggart, or my favorites when I was a kid, Jim and Tammy Faye Baker. These social media influencers create content for the sake of getting clicks. They preach fear. They ask you for your money, and then they leave you feeling like garbage. You want a general rule of thumb? Map out your nutrition. If you can get about 80% of the volume you eat from whole foods, from things that come in its more natural state, and less than about 20% of foods from packaged, processed, and chemically laden, then you're going to be doing all right. Well, there you have it, folks. That's my current top 5 myths, or maybe just my top 5 pet peeves about the fitness industry. Number 1, muscle weighs more than fat. Number 2, more complex movements are better for my metabolism. Number 3, be fearful of carbs. Number 5, join the religion of eating, number 4, join the religion of eating clean. And number 5, just about anything that comes out of Gary Brecka, Paul Saladino, or any of those idiots' mouths. Now, I'm curious, what are yours? Do you have questions? Do you have things that you think are myths? Do you have pet peeves? What have you heard and wonder, hey, is that true? Shoot me a message. As always, my DMs on social are open. I'm on LinkedIn more than any other platform, but you can also find me just about everywhere. It's at Steve Cutler with an underscore at the end. So thanks for joining me today for this episode. I hope it was helpful, informative, and maybe a little entertaining for you. I am Steve Cutler, reminding you that it takes time and consistency to evolve, but first you have to disrupt. And now it's time for you to get out there and evolve. Thanks for joining me today for this episode of The Evolved Man. If you're learning from and gaining value from this podcast, please subscribe to the Evolved Man newsletter, where I can support you even more in your personal evolution. I want to help you reverse engineer your success. The Evolved Man newsletter is like getting a free coaching session to keep you moving forward on your path of personal success. Go to theevolvedmanpodcast.com to sign up today. If you found value in this episode, you can give us up to a 5-star rating on Apple and Spotify, and share it with your network. That's the best way to support the podcast so we can continue to get great guests and provide you with the best wisdom for your daily life. Until next time, keep evolving.